Here, and we'll be ready in just about 5 seconds. Hang on. Okay, we're live.
Good evening. The Committee of the Whole meeting is called to order for December 1st, 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Yamas?
Here.
Alderman Garza?
Here.
Alderman Masiacos?
Present.
Alderman Donnell?
Here.
Alderman Franco?
Here.
Alderman Seville?
Here.
Alderman Hart Burns?
Here.
Alderman Smith?
Here.
Alderman Bug?
Here.
Alderman Lafshay?
Here.
Alderman Jenkins?
Here.
Alderman O'Connor?
Here.
Mayor Irvin's present.
On June 26, 2020, the Governor of Illinois issued a statewide disaster declaration related to the public health concerns. As head of this body, I've determined that an in-person meeting or a meeting otherwise conducted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act is neither practical nor prudent because of disaster. This meeting will be conducted by internet teleconference without the physical presence of a quorum. Prior to the commencement of this meeting, all members of the body were verified that they can see and hear one another. I further find that the physical presence of members of the public is not feasible at this meeting due to the disaster as well. And more specifically, the practical difficulties associated with accommodating the public in an accessible, hygienic location that allows for appropriate social distancing. Alternative arrangements have been made to allow the public to contemporaneously hear all discussions and roll call votes live on the city's official website, on Facebook, and via Zoom teleconference. Notice of these arrangements have been given in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. The public may address this body consistent with the rules previously adapted and recorded and is adopted and recorded as adapted by mayoral order. I, Mayor Richard Irvin, am physically present at the regular meeting location as those terms are defined by Resolution R20-124. All votes shall be conducted by roll call, and verbatim record of the meeting shall be made and maintained in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of November 17th?
So moved.
W meeting as presented?
Second.
There's been a motion made by Alderman Hart Burns, seconded by Alderman Seville. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Yamas?
Yes.
Alderman Garza?
Yes.
Alderman Masiacos?
Yes.
Alderman Donnell?
Yes.
Alderman Franco?
Yes.
Alderman Seville?
Yes.
Alderman Hart Burns?
Yes.
Alderman Smith?
Yes.
Alderman Bug?
Yes.
Alderman Lafshay?
Yes.
Alderman Jenkins?
Yes.
Alderman O'Connor?
Yes.
12 ayes.
All right. Madam Clerk, do we have the roll call? Madam Clerk, do we have any members of the public wishing to offer public comment?
We do, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Will you read the rules of the public comment, please, ma'am?
Pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, all persons shall be permitted an opportunity to address public officials under the rules established and recorded by the council. Under our rules, any person may address the Committee of the Whole for up to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes allotted for all public comment. No person other than the timekeeper or the chair, for the purpose of maintaining order, may interrupt a person recognized for public comment during his or her comments. Members of the Committee of the Whole shall not engage with nor respond to a speaker during the time set aside for public comment. Staff is directed to follow up with members of the public with respect to any concerns raised during public comment within the scope of the city's authority following the adjournment of this meeting.
Madam Clerk, will you please read the name of the first person to offer public comment?
Brian Dolan.
Mr. Dolan, can you hear my voice?
I can, and I don't know if I goofed this up. I think I was supposed to do this by phone, but I'll just wing it on Zoom if that's okay.
All right, sir. You have 3 minutes to speak starting now.
Okay, thanks. It's great to see everybody. I said earlier that it's so great to see everybody. I can't wait till we can all see each other in person. What I wanted to speak on was evidently there's the Caton Commercial is going to be working on some commercial space for the city of Aurora, and it's strange on timing, because as of today we've been working on this for about a year now, and I understand there's been some support for the Dolan family from the public on this issue. As of today, December 1st, we are officially starting a strategic alliance with Caton Commercial, and our firms are going together. And we were going to make a public announcement, and so I guess this is the first public announcement. So obviously the Dolans feel very highly about the Caton family and their tradition and their capability. They're a tremendous commercial company. And so obviously we will be with them, and we will be working on those properties just as much as the Catons will be. And so I wanted to kind of give my support. And as far as I guess there were some questions about fees and things like that. Obviously, because of antitrust rules, brokers are not allowed to talk about any other company's fees other than their own. So I can't say a whole lot about the fees, but obviously with the Dolans making this commitment to team up with the Caton family, obviously you can see that I feel very strongly about their family and their capabilities in the commercial real estate field. And to all those people who, supported the Dolans, in their comments, thank you so much. It means the world to us. But so this is, I guess, an official announcement. I didn't anticipate doing it at a committee of the whole meeting, but I guess this is as good as any place. And if I got 1 minute left, I just want to thank everybody for their thoughts about our father who passed. As everybody knows, he loved those hallowed halls of the council chambers, and I was going to actually try to speak at a city council meeting just to tell everybody how much he loved that chamber. And that was his Soldiers Field, or that was where he played his best game over the years. And win or lose, he just always had so much respect for city council and staff. And we didn't always win them, but he always respected all you guys, and for 50 years. And so I'll just jump on that quick soapbox. But as far as
Well, thank you, sir. You're through this up. We appreciate it. And congratulations on your merger.
well, thank you and love you all.
Thank you. Clerk, do we have any additional speakers?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. All right, so let's go on to committee reports. Chairman Seville, can you give the Building, Zoning, Economic Development Committee report, please?
Yes, Mayor, the BZ&E committee did not meet because there was no items for the agenda, so we canceled the meeting. So that's all we have to report.
Thank you, sir. Chairman O'Connor, can you give the Finance Committee report, please?
I can, and in our desire to constantly keep ahead of the BZE committee, we met twice, trying to run up the numbers before the end of the year. We first met on November 19th. The first item on that date was 20-0205, resolution authorizing the Director of Purchasing to purchase a VACCON combination sewer cleaning machine from EJ Equipment in the amount of $390,639.00. This would be the fourth VACCON or sewer cleaning machine that we have. Given the fact of the size of the city, it's very economical in order to be able to cover all of the city with the 4 units rather than just the 3 units. So, and this was planned and
Consent.
budgeted.
Consent.
With no objection, this item will go on consent.
All right. Item 20-0701 is the resolution authorizing the execution of an exclusive listing agreement with JBSC Inc., DBA Caton Commercial Real Estate Group. This matter had come before the committee twice in regard to a number of items of discussion on it. I don't know if Mr. Debo or Mr. Dick available. Mr. Debo, if you want to pick up on the overall explanation of this.
I'm going to ask Brian, if I can, to just from Investor Aurora, just give some opening comments, Brian Gay, and then I'll jump in and then we'll turn it over to Kate, if that's okay.
Great. Thank you, David. So as we originally presented at the Finance Committee a couple weeks back, Investor Aurora has been working with Caton Commercial for about a year now, and that it was Investor Aurora's original intent to reach out to Caton Commercial Real Estate to go through an analysis of kind of the downtown real estate market. And going through that process, we had identified, we wanted to make sure that we were identifying opportunities going forward for potential uses that, one, would avoid any further cannibalization of newer existing businesses that might be coming into the downtown market. Specifically for this reason, the city had made a number of large, significant investments in the downtown over the past 2 or 3 years. And we just wanted to make sure that whatever attraction efforts we had going forward, that they made sense, and that it was rather a positive attraction into downtown, and not viewed as a detriment or causing additional harm to any of our existing businesses in the downtown. We also wanted to make sure, again, from that standpoint, that we were taking in consideration what the public had, what the public really wanted to see in the downtown. Invest Aurora, about 3 years ago, had conducted a retail study for the downtown, in which we had a number of, we had about 150, 200 responses to the original survey, giving us some good data on the types of businesses that residents and visitors wanted to see in the area. And then along with Caton's assistance, we really wanted to tap into their expertise in terms of identifying what our gaps were within the downtown and the retail mix, and then also, helping us identify future opportunities to fill those gaps, whether that would be a retail location, restaurant, or a service. And so we proceeded over the next few months to put together analysis of what they're identifying, those opportunities and those gaps. And as part of that analysis, we then also started to look at 7 city-owned properties within the downtown area. And this is only a small portion of what the city owns, but these were some of those what we would call premier locations in the downtown. And what you have in your packet from that finance committee is the analysis that Caton Commercial developed with us for these properties. And what I really like about it is that, one, we came up with, using Caton's assistance in this matter. They have a number of tenants that they normally work with, throughout the western suburbs and, really all of Chicagoland. And we were able to use their expertise to identify, one, if out of these 7 city properties, what was the most likely and highest and best use for those properties. But what also made sense from a use going forward was a particular space, destined to be a restaurant, or maybe the direct opposite, maybe was a retail and should never be a restaurant, based on the amount of money that was going to be put into there. So at the conclusion of that process, we really, Invest Aurora, and working with the city, really had identified an opportunity that moving forward with a pilot program with a recommended broker would really help establish a good program moving forward, where then the city, working with a broker, could then better market the properties, better identify particular uses that would fit, and again, add on to the business mix in the downtown area. And at that point in time, we started an evaluation process of both of Caton Commercial, as well as about five other brokerages that were currently active in the downtown area. We looked at the recent leasing activity in the downtown to identify those brokers. We looked at their list of represented tenants, and then we were looking at their current activity, not only in the downtown, but around all of Aurora. And we really wanted to identify a team that, one, had a strong understanding of both the suburban downtown retail markets, because any downtown, not just specific to Aurora, every downtown is a little bit different. It's not going to be your Route 59 or your Orchard Avenue or Ogden. It's really kind of its own beast. And so we wanted to make sure that we identified a team that, again, had a good understanding of those downtown markets, and then in general of the western suburbs. And after going through that process, again, it was really Caton Commercial that stuck out to us as kind of the team moving forward. Like I said, we looked at 5 other groups as part of this evaluation. And again, time and time again, after looking at all the data, it was Caton. So at that point in June, this past year, we made a recommendation to the city to start this process of negotiation on a master lease agreement for 4 properties out of the 7. And these are, 1 would be for sale and 3 would be for lease properties. And again, really help us establish and build on the successes that we've had over the past 2-3 years in the downtown. And on the call today, we also have Autumn Saros from Caton Commercial, as well as Caton Kitchell. I know that Christina is a little bit under the weather, so I believe Autumn's going to be speaking on their behalf. But I think at this point, I'd like to hand it over to David to talk a little bit more about the listing agreement and kind of that process that we went through.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. That was a great job. I want to first thank the Finance Committee for some really valuable input. I always do value the dialogue, and I think this was a case where we really had some very active give and take both at the meetings. I think as Chairman O'Connor mentioned that this was held over a couple of times. The reason it was held over was more, there was some medical issues on the Caton side from their legal team that we had to make sure that everything was okay there before we moved ahead with some of the documents. But it did give us a chance to take a really close look at the agreement. And I want to just bring up 2 points about that. So we might want to break that discussion down from the Finance Committee between economic issues and then some other issues that are harder to quantify, but certainly of great importance. Chairman O'Connor in particular, and again, everybody at the Finance Committee gave some really good input in terms of the agreement itself. And as a result of that, we've made some changes. And I know you refreshed your iPads because the agreement kept modifying it in a way that I would say just made it tighter and tighter. And regarding the city, 2 specific things. Alderman Chairman O'Connor had mentioned that there was a termination fee if the agreement was terminated, and also if a deal didn't go through and there was a deposit, then that deposit would be shared in some way. The chairman mentioned that that was unusual. We did some research. We do agree that it was unusual, and that was taken out of the agreement in a discussion that we had with Caton. I do want to mention on the financial side also regarding the economics of the transaction. Brian, we did do a lot of research in terms of the commission rate, ironically, and I just want to take a quick aside and congratulate you. I'm still kind of reeling from that announcement. Very exciting. But we did some research in terms of and spoke to the people who own, let's say, the River Street Plaza, and Brian's one of them, but in terms of what they have a third-party broker there working on that deal and what was that commission rate. And we did find generally the way these rates worked, not so much in Aurora, but in other cities where the rates were higher. And we wondered why. And the reason has to do with, again, we're a nascent market, we're getting there, but our rents might be, let's say, half what rents would be in some of our neighboring cities. And the result of the commissions, which is a function of that, are half. So I don't know, Alex Manella, if you're on the line, but you might want to just quickly throw up a quick thing. So a real quick and dirty kind of thing where we took one of the examples of a deal, a 1,400 square foot deal, let's say at $14 a foot, 3-year lease, which I think Alderman Lofshe, a lot of other people in the real estate business might consider somewhat typical. What that commission rate would be, 8% plus 2 for a cooperating broker, that's 10%, and how that splits. Looks like 10% sounds like a lot, but when you look at what the rate would be, let's say $3,000 for the co-broker, $3,000 for Caton, really, something that we need to do in order to motivate these brokers do not get paid unless a deal happens. So Alex, you could take that down, but I just wanted to make that point over there. So on the commission rate, but I'm happy to talk about that more if we need to. The other issue I just wanted to mention that came out as a result of the discussions with the Finance Committee has to do, I think, more with the soul of the city in terms of what are we doing here in terms of when we hire a brokerage firm, and what are we doing, and what does it mean for Aurora? And I will say that one of the things that I'm so attracted to in working with the city is I have worked around the country and I have never seen a place like Aurora. It is actually the most unique city that I have ever worked in. And it's very hard to define what it should exactly look like as it continues its evolution. Very often people talk about what we don't want it to be. We don't want it to be looking like this city, and we don't want it to be that city. And that's kind of easier to define than what it will look like. I think intuitively, a lot of us know what we want it to be. But I want to thank the people that had the dialogue with us to keep us on track and to remind us what this city is all about. We did do a master plan study about 3 years ago, and the master plan actually, in fact, defined what the goal was here in terms of leasing in the downtown and selling in the downtown. And I just want to quote the master plan that was approved. And you could see those key recommendation areas: enhance the business climate by focusing on economic development initiatives and programming to encourage investment, focus on growing small, local, niche businesses, support the downtown core by enhancing livability. That's part of a 150-page report. Happy to send it around if it'd be an interesting thing if people haven't looked at it recently. But the point that I'm making, and I want to just conclude with this, is that we're very cognizant of the challenges and the gentrification issues and all the things that people want to make sure that we're on task. And I will say that the mayor is extremely focused on this. We've got the staff and we've got you, the city council. No lease is going to be approved. No sale is going to be approved without coming right back to this committee. So all in all, that's some of the background. I am going to turn it over to Autumn now and then take any questions as we move forward.
Hello. Thank you all again for your time and for your consideration of us and of our firm. You know, we are really excited to work with you. And again, we are not trying to come in and reinvent the plan or change the plan in any way. You know, you guys, you have that. And what we are here to do is basically supplement that and to help achieve some of those goals that are already in place. So, you know, Caton is about 20 people strong. It's a local family owned and operated business. I've been in real estate for 16 years now, and the majority of that time I spent with CBRE, which is one of the world's largest commercial real estate firms. I've seen it from that side, and they are a great company and they do great things. But I moved over to Caton Commercial because they understand the markets that they work in. They intimately are involved in them. They're ethical people, and they're a nimble small firm, but they do big things. And so we're excited. I'm excited, and we're excited to partner with you guys and you know, help move this forward. And I think to touch a little bit more on you know, what Brian and David had said is really two things. One, again, this is not a long-term partnership that we are taking every single one of the city-owned properties. We are taking a select small piece in a pilot program. We're taking 4 properties to market to see what we can do with those and how we can help those. And if we do a good job, great, everyone wins. If we don't, then that's all that you guys have us tied to. And 2, we are working on 100% commission. We only get paid if we perform. So if we accomplish your goals that you have set out and the things that we say that we can help you do, that's the only way that we will get paid on this. So thank you again for your time, and we look forward to working with you.
Any questions from the members of the council?
Yeah, I have one. I have a couple. Cade's a great firm. Dolan's a good firm. They know what they're doing. Some of the fees, we have to be careful with antitrust, but since this is a public forum, I think they might be a little excessive. We don't typically get paid on renewals. And I think 8% for a sale is a little high. And I want to make sure that it's going to be split or at least close, that the cooperating broker gets, half or close to half. It doesn't have to be half, but it should get at least half. So I just think a couple of things need to be clarified. My other big issue is, why is the city leasing property? I know that garage, we probably have to, but the other three, I don't know why we wouldn't sell them and get them back on the tax rolls. And if you have other properties downtown, like the 1517 Broadway, that restaurant next to the venue, why wouldn't we get rid of those?
Well, I think, first of all, any one of these deals could turn into, as you know, some of these deals start as a lease, could turn into a sale. I think the idea is also, as you know, if we could, in fact, lease it up, vacant property today, values, you really don't get a lot of the lift. If we could, in fact, lease it, or at least understand the economics of it, some of them, require some TI, take a look at it. But I think in any situation, we're open. But the key thing that we're after, it's just selling a property. If the city owns a property, these are vacant properties, vacant storefronts. This is what we want to move. If let's say some trust comes in and buys a property and buys it at a good value, that's really doesn't do anything. What we want users, we want to make sure that the livability issue, the service issue is here in the city. So what we can do on properties that we do own is we could help influence the type of users coming in here, as opposed to just moving a property. We're not in the real estate business. We're trying to enhance things in the city. So that's, I think, why the idea was focusing on the users, i.e. the leasing. But again, any one of these deals can turn into a sale.
Any other questions? All right.
Unfinished, please.
All right. Then the next item is 200706, recommendation to amend the resident and non-resident ambulance user fees. Again, we covered this in a couple of our different meetings, and with assistance from some good recommendations from Alderman Bug, we did make some changes on this. Mr. Lyons, if you're on, given the length of our agenda tonight, if you can give a particularly brief review of what we're doing here, would be appreciated.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the Committee of the Whole. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
The Finance Committee reviewed this item twice over a few meetings, and in the cover memo and in the attachment that is a one-page attachment, we outline the ambulance fees. I think what the big takeaways for this change are 3 or 4. Number one, changing our methodology from using a Naperville study to using a larger study provided to us with Andres Medical Billing. That's over 100 different departments. And then using our comparable communities that we use for bargaining, these are like size fire departments to us. So we changed the methodology. 2, we looked at how are we collecting our fees and what's our process, meaning we collect our fees and we also balance bill. We balance bill both resident and non-resident. Many communities, and it was provided in the attached information, do not balance bill their residents anymore. They will balance bill non-residents, but they don't balance bill residents. What this allows us to do is to have a much higher resident fee that is closer to our costs, but not in turn charge our residents more than what Medicare or their insurance will cover. So what you see is increases in our resident rates and increases in our non-resident rates, but we will not be balance billing residents. So there will not be a regressive impact on residents who don't have the ability to pay. We have somebody who is billed and we get a notice back that no insurance picked up, no Medicare picked up. We have the ability to write off the resident billing. And what's critical about this, and it's been tested legally, is that we may treat our residents different than non-residents because of the property tax impact. That residents, whether they're through their rent paid in an apartment or through their owning of a home, pay property taxes, and we are able to have a differential rate and able to have a write-off provision. So this is not something that we're groundbreaking. Other communities have been doing this, and finally, we're doing this rate change also because of the ground transport GEMT program. The state has advised us clearly that because of our low resident fees, that they will not try and get Medicare, Medicaid funding, the state doing that through the federal government at a rate higher than what we have as being charged, even though our cost is over $2,200 an ambulance run. To address that, we need to raise our rates to a higher level and hopefully get the GEMT fees that other communities are able to access because of their rate structure. As noted in the memo, we are reducing our GEMT projected revenue budget from 3 million down to 2 million. There's not a lot of faith after receiving so much less than anticipated for 2021, but we are increasing our regular ambulance revenues, and all of that increase is from increases in insurance. We project that we will actually have $200,000, a little over that, in less collection fees, meaning that we will not be out balance billing and sending people to collection and collecting through that measure. So a lot to digest. Again, I want to stress this will not be an impact to resident ambulance fees. We will be writing off anything that goes straight into a resident's pocket, meaning a balance bill. And Andres Medical is a large firm that does this for over 100 entities in the state of Illinois. And I've worked with them in 2 previous communities. They do have this ability to handle this situation, know when to balance bill, know when not to. So we recommend, we had a long discussion per the resolution. The CFO is empowered to change ambulance fees, but given this major change, we thought it would be a good idea to bring it to Finance Committee for discussion purposes, which we did for 2 separate meetings. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? All right.
Set.
There's no action.
There's no action.
Pardon?
No action.
Second.
This resides in the Chief Financial Officer by previous authorization in regard to it, but we wanted the full understanding of why changes were being made. So it doesn't have to go to the council. All right. The next item is 200721, a resolution authorizing well maintenance services for well number 129 for the Water Production Division.
Consent.
Consent. The next item is 200722, a resolution authorizing a scheduled inventory reagent replacement plan with the Hawk Company for the Water Production Division. This is the source that we have been using. This is the normal sequence in regard to the replacement of reagents and chemicals.
Consent.
Okay. Next item is 200759, a resolution authorizing purchases from IDEXX Laboratories, Inc. for budget year 2021 for the Water Production Division. Consent. The next item is 200770, a resolution ratifying payment to Rush Truck Centers of Illinois for the replacement of the main engine in Truck 6 for the Aurora Fire Department in the amount of $59,645.
Consent.
This was a problem that had come up. This is one of our frontline pieces of equipment in the truck that we needed to do it in order to get it back online. So consent.
Consent.
All right, next item is 200771, a resolution authorizing and approving a business development district sales tax sharing agreement with Pacific Square DE LLC and authorizing and approving the use of business district taxes to reimburse Pacific Square DE LLC for eligible costs in redeveloping Pacifica Square Shopping Center. Mr. Debo, if you can, we've talked about this. We had authorized a number of these items, and you can explain the action that we're taking now.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. We're just simply, this is the last step in a fairly long step in terms of establishing the business district. The business district was established, boundaries, and then we're authorized to collect money from the business district. And this final step allows us to give that money back over to the owner of the shopping center. Just as a reminder, these are taxes, and in this case, 0.25%, that are imposed by the owner on customers shopping in that shopping center. So it's no money out of pocket for us. We really are just facilitating. And as I mentioned in the Finance Committee, this was part of a three-legged stool, one being the sales tax sharing agreement, then this business district, and then there was discussion of a TIF. A TIF has not been moved upon here, but that was the original agreement with Pacifica Square.
All right, any questions?
Consent.
Consent.
All right. Then we moved on to our meeting on November 24th. First item was 200603, a resolution to contract with MDI Access Data Center Solutions, MDI, for the UPS battery equipment and maintenance in various city facilities in an amount totaling $103,635 for 5 years. Again, the normal sequence in order to replace these batteries or keep them in shape.
Consent.
I have a question. Someone from IT, is there no reason we would not bid this out? Is it proprietary or something, Jeff?
Hi, this is Jeff Anderson, Deputy CIO. Thank you, Alderman, for the question. This is the second half of what we did back in, I think it was February. It was when we all could meet in person to get all the cities' UPSs all on one contract. So we had used MDI previously at the data center that's at APD. So what we're doing here is taking all of the others and putting it on that same contract, right? Putting it all with the same vendor. Okay.
Consent acceptable?
Consent. Consent.
All right, now we move into some of the real fun parts of the Finance Committee meetings. The next 14 items are ordinances levying special service area taxes for the year 2021 for each of the numbers involved. And I would ask Mr. Veenstra, in the committee, we made one motion in regard to this. Can we make a motion, or is it acceptable if all of these presented, if there is no objection, go on consent, as there are no changes, no additions or adjustments to any of this? This is the same actions that we've taken before in all of these special service areas.
Mr. Chairman, if you wanted to request consent as to items 20-743 through, it looks like 20-7056.
Right.
And have those go to consent, I believe that would be, for the purpose of the Open Meetings Act, sufficient recital, given the subject matter being the levying of special service area taxes with respect to those particular special service areas for the next calendar year, with final action to occur at City Council next week.
That, in the fact that they'll all be on the agenda on the City Council, so there's no question what they are. So
correct. They'll be recited prior to final action.
All right, again, this deals with the taxes for all of the special service areas. that are indicated. Is there any objection if this would go on consent?
Consent.
All right, all those items as noted will go on consent. Then that brings us to number 200776, an ordinance adopting an annual budget for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2021, ending December 31st, 2021, in lieu of passage of an appropriation ordinance. Let me indicate some comments first before I'm going to call on Mr. Lyons. This budget is a result of a huge amount of work in regard to the entire city of Aurora and the departments. I think they start even in March or April and starting to put this together. Tremendous time spent then in review by the Department of Finance and the mayor's office in regard to putting it together before presentation to the committee. We had 8 meetings on the Finance Committee in order to review this. This budget comes in, as you may have noticed, we've already had our publication of the information for our public hearing, which will be part of this at the council meeting. The budget would provide for expenditures of $406,015,316. It is essentially a balanced budget. It is a budget that was developed on the basis of the horrendous year that we've had in 2020 in the loss of revenue and the necessity to not spend money in order to avoid a tremendous deficit by the end of the year. And that we have heard several times from the chief financial officer and the mayor's office that we have been very successful in holding on a number of projects in order to get us into 2021. This budget will include a carryover amount for those projects that were allocated for 2020 that didn't get done, that are still projected to go forward. That will be, and maybe Mr. Lyons will correct me as to the final number, but that will be approximately $38 million of carryover. What that effect was, however, that probably some of the significant projects that were going to be funded for 2021 in combination with what was being done in 2020 will not be done. They will be carried over. For instance, the new maintenance facility was intended, I think, originally for a considerable amount of money to be spent in 2021 for the project. But that's not feasible at this point. What will begin is a number of elements of that maintenance facility and then continuing on into 2022, which will be shown in that next budget. So I want to again compliment all of the city staff and Department of Finance and the mayor's office for the hard work in putting this together, which included, as I think you're aware, a 5% decrement that was applied. The original budget came forward, and then in order to get to the end of the year without significant difficulties, it was requested a 5% decrement. And if any of you have obviously looked at the budget, you realize if you just simply throw into the mix, you've got to take 5% of your spending out. That made a lot of hard work on part of the staff members and the directors in order to get to that goal. And it was achieved, and we are appreciative of all of of that work that was done in that regard. So at this point, I would turn it over to Mr. Lyons if you have any comments overall.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Because of the length of our overall agenda, it's hard to summarize 440 million with carryovers quickly. But to give the council a short summary, we take the PowerPoint that we give to the committee that's about 10 slides and cut it in half. So I'd like to go through those 5 slides because it talks a little bit about what the chair just summarized. And then we'll be happy to also go through the attachments, which are the carryovers, what we call late changes with our budget. We start in June, July. Well, in a COVID world especially, things change all the time. So we also have what's called late changes, things that happen after our published date internally at about August, September. We still have changes. And then we also provide an expenditure summary. And finally, the entire several hundred-page document is provided. So without further ado, I'm going to share the screen quickly. Does everyone have the City of Aurora 2021 proposed budget overview on their screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, that's the summary. That's it. Oh, sorry. Well,
Thank you.
so we are just going to talk briefly about budgeted revenues and expenses, general fund budgeted revenues and expenses, and as I just noted, the decision packages. So Chairman O'Connor just provided this summary to you. It's also provided in your packet. I think it's important to note that we are looking at an overall decrease in the budget. We are not looking to try and catch up all of the capital projects that were deferred last year and do this year's capital projects all in one year. We're going to spread that hump in the carpet out a little bit. We will try and catch up within the next couple of years, but just from a staffing point, our own public works group, everybody can't get everything that was scheduled to be done last year and this year, next year, all in one year. So that's why you see some of the decreases. It's in capital. It's not because we're cutting back on funding. It's going to be a little bit about matter of time. So, I just want to, if anyone has any specific questions, Ken Schroth or I are available at any time during the year to talk about the capital improvements plan that we do a 200-page separate document for. So, what are some of the big changes? I'm sorry, my screen always goes off to the side on me, so I'm going to look away from the camera for a second. My apologies. The general fund, we are looking at, is everyone hearing me okay? I have a symbol that says I have an unstable internet.
You're okay for now, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you. You can see our expenses, our revenues are down by over $1 million in the general fund. So, over $1 million, right under it. And I'm going to explain why that is. Our revenues compared to expenses, last year we had a general fund deficit after carryovers of just over $1 million. And you'd say, well, why that? Didn't the alderman just say we had a balanced budget? We do. We have some projects, programs, et cetera, in the general fund that we funded last year and we're now carrying over. So there's no need for any additional revenues to accomplish those. Those revenues are in our fund balance. So this year we have a much more balanced budget even after carryovers. Only $246,000 in carryovers that are coming in that would create a slight deficit in the general fund. And once again, you've seen me every month show our cash balance and fund balance. The general fund is balanced and stable. We are in a better cash and fund balance this year than we were last year at the same time. And this budget, by being balanced, would project that all the way through 2021. So what are some of the things? We do have a increase in the police and fire pension of 3.1 million. When we talk about the tax levy, it's listed as a little bit less because when we talk about levies, we talk about the levy as extended compared to the new levy. In budget speak, we go levy to levy. So it looks a little bit different. For those who really read all the documents, I wanted to have that out there when we get to the levy on our next in our next agenda item. So we are looking, as I noted in the earlier agenda item, a $1 million increase in the ambulance fees. And another positive out of COVID is a $1.2 million increase in our local use tax. That's our internet sales tax. State's done a good job of getting more and more of those dollars. They can still do better, but at least it's not going down like some of our state shared revenues. This budget does include some one-time revenues because of COVID. You can see them, there's a one-to-one offset in this situation. So transfer from the gaming tax fund of $1.1 million. This is going to be put in as a loan from the gaming tax fund that the general fund will pay back. So it is not a transfer that is something that will, we have it scheduled to pay back $250,000 for the next 4 years. The next one is the transfer from debt service, and that is listed as a refinancing of our 2021 debt. You heard me talk about refinancing our 2020 debt. We don't have to do that. We're stable enough. We don't need to do that. We did not issue any lines of credit. We are in a good position per my report on the 24th of November. So major revenue decreases, sales tax down by 1.1 million, home rule sales tax down by 585,000, income tax. This is the one that per IML and the State Department of Revenue, this is a $3.1 million loss on a $21 million revenue. So it's fairly substantial given all of the claims for unemployment, all of these things. IML and Department of Revenue are projecting lower revenues next year because that's the income we're making this year. We get those taxes next year. And lastly, telecom tax continues to decrease. That's the decreasing use of landlines and all of those legacy systems that the state telecom tax structure doesn't account for. So conversely, we did get a big bump in our emergency telephone systems revenues, but that was through a lot of work on our part, leaving Kane County and going to a partnership with Naperville. So those are our decreases for revenue. And then this slide is a look at our expenses across the board. Chairman O'Connor noted we have a 5% decrement, but not for public safety. Police and fire were not asked to do a decrement. So when you see their budgets are slightly increasing. And why is that? Are they only slightly increasing? We had tremendous turnover in police and fire due to retirements during 2020. So we have a lot of new police and firefighters coming in at the bottom of the scale. We will catch up over time when those individuals all reach their top of their pay grade. But for right now, we take advantage of a new movement, not necessarily a youth movement, but we will have people in at their bottom of scale in 2021 at a higher level. Also, kudos to Alicia Lewis and Alex Alexandru. We do have slightly decreasing healthcare and liability costs in those two funds, and those translate into lower transfers from the general fund. So that's helped keep everybody's budgets lower. I know that you see they're not all equal. Not all departments have decreases of equal amounts. We do have, per our budget discussions, we had some reorganizations and things of that nature. But this doesn't represent any reductions in force. These are, this maintains our service level in the general fund. So again, this, I'm gonna use my mouse a little bit, this 193,770,000 number compares to the 193,524,000 revenue number. So we are balanced. And with that, I'll take questions on the presentation and then jump to the carryover list and things of that nature in case there are questions on that.
I'm going to close out of this one right quick so we can see who's looking to ask questions.
Mr. Lyons, if I could suggest that maybe because of the number of pages on showing on the carryovers, unless there's something really outstanding that somebody has to ask about, that would be a situation where if the council members would review that, if they have specific questions, and they can contact Mr. Lyons about it before next week. Obviously, every one of them has different elements to it and different perspective as to why they are carried over or what has happened in that regard. But are there any overall questions for Mr. Lyons on the presentation? This is normally what happens when you conduct the finance committee long enough. Everybody gets quiet after a time. So, but I wanted to say just real quickly that part of the process here is the really positive involvement of the finance committee itself. We covered a lot of topics and there were a lot of different points made, questions, revisions, suggestions that were made from the members of the committee. And I will tell you that we had the 8 meetings. We have 5 members. We had an attendance rate of probably in excess of 95%. I compliment the committee for their involvement. They were there, they were active, they were asking questions. We covered a lot of details, and it's appreciated because it really points out, and I have to emphasize to the council, as I have in the past, that there are changes made during this whole process. We identify certain expenses that we don't really have an understanding of, and that may simply have been something that carried over from the year before and should not be in the budget. And we're appreciative of Mr. Lyons and Stacy Peterson and the entire department and the finance department in catching those things, working with us and getting them corrected. Also, we do try to make changes that are going to improve overall the budget. This year, we did have a change in regard to a recommendation of elimination of one proposed position, feeling that the work could be done within the staff for the coming year, and moved the money allocated for that, in addition to $100,000 offered by Mr. Lyons from the ambulance fees, into what is to be created called a community COVID-19 response account. And that is to pair it with the money that's going to be available through block grant and through the community services in any event for trying to respond to all of the problems that have occurred by the COVID-19 crisis, whether it's business loans, whether it's additional funds for community organizations who are involved in mental health and counseling and assistance to aid to residents or our citizens. That's going to be available another $215,000 to try to get into the year because we're obviously all in the position. We don't know exactly what's going to happen in 2021. Awaiting the vaccine, waiting the rollout of how that's going to take effect. So there are a lot of positive changes that are made within the budget. But again, my compliments go out to Marty and the staff and the mayor's office in regard to working our way through this. They're always responsive. We get an answer if we have a question. We get a correction if we point out something, and it makes the whole process a lot easier, a lot better. And I will say, I'm taking a lot of time because this is the 36th and final budget that I get to work on. I came close to recommending finally getting $10 million into the alderman's office for a lot of things that we needed to do, but I didn't figure it would go so well. So, but it has been a very good process this year in light of a lot of problems. And we're appreciative of how we got through this in order to get us into 2021 in a much better shape. Any other questions? This will have to go on unfinished. Mr. Franco?
I don't have a question, I have a comment, and I'd like to, I want to thank you, Alderman O'Connor, because I've been on a number of committees now, but this committee is very complex and complicated at times, especially during budget time. And your leadership and your in-depth knowledge is so valuable because I could probably speak for a number of people on the committee. Every time you ask a question, we learn so much. Sometimes it's kind of intimidating because your question is so involved and based on a lot of history. And I do appreciate that because it just makes us all better. So thank you for your years of doing that. And it's going to be tough to replace you, but thank you for the job you've done with that. It's been extraordinary.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. All right, we'll have a public hearing placed on unfinished. The next item, having fun with that, is the important one, 20077 ordinance levying taxes for the city of Aurora, Illinois for the fiscal year January 1, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. And Mr. Lyons, you probably have a screen to share with us on this one.
Actually, this one I do not, because the memo is short. I can bring up the memo itself, but if you'd like, I can just give a summary, Mr. Chair.
Well, I think you just hit on the highlights that we've got that pension problem again. And you already illustrated that, but you just entering into what is calculated and how we get to our levy. We have that major elephant in the room of the pension costs. So all the information.
Mr. Lyons, I think
sorry.
speaking on what you told myself and Alex Alexandru earlier today about the levy not being raised and the one for pensions only being raised half of what it was last year. Can you go on?
Last year, we had a request for over 4.2 million, and through a cooperative effort with the both pension boards and the city council, we reduced that to a $3.5 million increase by deferring $700,000 to this year. So this year we added the 700,000 in good faith into what the actuary said, and that produced a little over a $2.89 million increase with the 700,000 added. So without that, it would have been a $2.3 million increase. And I want to give you a little perspective on that. The pension funds combined are more than $500 million in liability, and more than they're a little over 250 million in assets. So our increase is in the million, but they're both big funds, and to catch up, we need to have these increases to move the needle even a little bit. So I'm going to stay away from, this year we didn't have any changes in actuarial assumptions, and that helped. December 31st, 2019 was a good end of year for the stock market, so that helped. We will, I think that we benefited from that. Again, to the mayor's point, we have no increase in either the debt service levy or in the operating levy, and totally under separate process now. The library is doing their own levy, and we have confirmed with them that they have levied for the library bonds in their operating levy, and we will therefore abate those bonds in our levy. We'll do that on the 17th. Our abatement process comes to the council, so that will happen later on this month. But overall, with the state of the economy, we felt it best to leave the levy for operations frozen. And you can see previously in my presentation, we did lose some other revenues, and we did not try and raise the property tax levy to counter those. We looked at other one-time solutions, because we feel that our income tax will come back, our sales tax will come back for 2022.
All right, any questions?
I have a question.
Malachi.
So Marty, I have a question. So with the revenues being down, our cash position is, I assume, is going to be less. We're not going to have the 2 months of operating.
No, not because we have had the austerity measures, and because of the CARES, the diligent efforts by the mayor's office and some of my team. We will be getting over $11 million in CARES funding. So our fund and cash balance is stable. As I just recycled it. I hate when I make the paper on the headlines. City finances stable was the headline in the recent Beacon News. So
okay, but knowing that we're going to issue 11 million in bonds, and the pensions go up every year, we need to maybe, shouldn't we look forward and say, okay, if the pensions are going to go up every year, we have to increase the levy. It falls on the taxpayers. And we're going to issue 11 million in bonds, which I assume 5 of that is for the road in my ward on Commons between Ogden and 75th. Won't we have to increase the debt service levy next year and the pensions?
Not next year. Yes, it is possible for next year that we would, so a year from now, we could be looking at an increase in the debt service levy, but it's only a possibility because, for instance, Commons that you just referenced is 8.4 million, but that will be completely paid for out of the TIF. That will not involve any increase to the general population on their tax levy. Now, well, the other projects, we had some of the downtown projects that might cause that. Those were the grants that were not being financed through tax credits, but we have fully discussed those, and those won't change based on COVID or based on our revenue picture for operations. So I understand the concern, but I would then also point out it will be a change of $1 million on a $440 million total budget. I do owe the council a debt picture. We did one last year at this time, and we will do another one, but we are finalizing a lot of our activities as noted in this agenda regarding Copley and other things. So the short answer is that could go up next year, but we have a long ways to go before then. So, and to raise the tax levy now in the middle of COVID to try and smooth anything out or, I wouldn't recommend it. And also I wouldn't recommend cutting life safety services because of a desire to reduce the tax levy right now. Our solution, one-time revenues, is a nice cushion. That's why we have those reserves in other funds. And we will continue to monitor that like we did this year.
Mr. Alexandru.
Mr. Mayor, good evening, Council. I just wanted to add, this in no way are we indicating we're out of the woods. We are continuing with our austerity. We're continuing with our monthly and in some cases daily monitoring with staff of revenues and expenses. And just because we completed the CARES Act funding acquisition from our counties, we still are focusing on what's ahead in terms of other stimulus packages. Let's not forget either that right now, despite our stable position, almost all of our revenue sources are either shut down or deeply impacted by the current Tier 3 restrictions. And we don't know when we're going to get out of those to allow places like the Fox Valley Mall, the Simon Outlet Center. We certainly did not have our typical Black Friday out at the mall, at either mall. The casino is still closed. And you're all aware that we rely on the casino to fund a lot of our social services programs, a lot of our different funds that help make our city great and distinguish it from other cities. So a lot of this is timing, but from the beginning in March, we said when this pandemic hit that we were going to continue to prioritize public service, public safety, and public health to the extent we can. And so we're thankful that we had such in-depth finance committee discussions, frank, honest, transparent discussions, and kudos to Chairman O'Connor and the finance committee and to the aldermen that participated, because you took your time to come in on these meetings and you followed up with staff. So we're not out of the woods. But Alderman Lofty, your points are well taken. We are monitoring, and we will keep the public and keep you folks constantly apprised as things develop.
A desire to have this on consent or unfinished?
Consent.
Unfinished.
Okay, it'll be placed on unfinished. Mr. Lyons, just as a follow-up, I can tell you that all of the council members are happy not to have their pictures on an article about taxes. So you took the hit for us. Thank you very much. So, you know, that's part of the job, right? So
Yes, sir, it is. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, the next item is 200779, a resolution authorizing the purchase of bulk road salt in the amount of $45.25 per ton for the 2020-21 winter season from Cargill
Consent.
Incorporated. No objection to that. Consent. The last item, you're all saying thank you. Last item is 200793, a resolution authorizing purchase of property, boiler machinery, fine arts, crime, cyber liability, excess cyber, general liability, law enforcement, auto liability, excess workman's compensation, liquor liability, special events liability, and drone liability insurance policies for the period of December 31st, 2020 through December 31st, 2021. There have been a few adjustments among a number of these by reason of COVID and also whatever is out in the market. There is a slight increase overall in regard to this cost, but we are still receiving insurance coverage on all of these categories, which are obviously each and every one of them important in their own way. Mr. Alexander, do you have anything to add to that?
Well said, Mr. Chairman. We did aggressively market this despite COVID through our broker hub. We expected, frankly, a much higher increase overall, so we were pleased it wasn't what we had originally budgeted. So we are going to come in a bit under. There are a couple of things just to note. With the extensive marketing, the incumbents, with the exception of the cyber coverage, are back with the incumbents. The issue in the cybersecurity market is it has hardened greatly, and where we had a single level of $10 million coverage, no company, including the incumbent, would go over $5 million. So we had to quickly adjust and market a little more and find another layer because it was important to us to maintain our increased coverage that we have expiring in 2020 for 2021. So we were able to get another layer, a company called Access, so that we can maintain our $15 million worth of coverage in that area. But everything else, all told, will be the same, and we will preserve our $35 million in general liability umbrella that we have. And so overall, as good a result as we can expect in these circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Consent.
Or Mr. Yeah,
Mr. Lyons.
I just want to, it's really tough to listen to the chief management officer talk about modest increases and anybody feeling concerned. We are probably one of the best funded property and casualty internal service fund that I've ever worked with. We have all of our claims reserved. That means they're funded, plus an additional cash reserve in case we ran into a large claim during the year. And all of these policies are covered in the budget. So it's incredibly important to note that number one, our total overall costs are fairly low for a community our size, and we haven't had large increases. And now I got to find some wood to knock on. But I just want to point out that this is incredible to be in this position. And I already noted the health insurance that Alex and Alicia work on. So if you want proof of that, you go to the treasurer's report from our last council meeting and look in internal service funds. And we give you that information every month that we're in good shape in those funds.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Mr. Lyons. All right, Mr. Mayor, that is all, and that is enough. So
Thank you, kind sir. Chairman Hard Burns, can you give the Public Health, Safety, and Transportation Committee report, please?
Sure, I can. Thank you so much. Our Public Health and Safety met on November. Oh my God, November. I'm sorry, y'all. They keep texting me, whiny, happy birthday. Everybody's sending me happy birthday. I'm sorry. But anyway, Public Health and Safety met on November 24th. We had two items to discuss. It was 2006-79, so a resolution establishing a maximum number of Class A package sale beer and wine and Class B on-site consumption liquor unofficially related to the application for Casablanca Supermercado at 770 Claim Street. Jennifer?
Ms. Stallings? Is there any issues with this?
There are no issues, but I do believe Ms. Cardenas is on the phone. If anyone has any questions for her. If not, this is
That
just.
could go on consent.
Consent.
Consent, thank you. Then item number 20-0772 is a resolution authorizing the chief of police the authority to sign a yearly updated agreement for use of an outdoor firearm range between Kendall County and the Sheriff's Office and the Aurora Police Department. Alderman Bug?
Yeah, thank you. I have a quick question on this. Just in reading the first part of the contract, it says that the contract can be revoked without notice by Kendall County. And during our current time with electronic communication, I no longer see those clauses in contracts. Is this an old boilerplate that they would not be able to send over a 15-minute electronic communication to give us notice if they wanted to revoke it?
Commander Fickle? Commander?
Alderman. Yeah, that was the one that they sent over to us. They actually had amended it for this year to include a 2-year agreement. So I can't answer that part.
Yeah, it says they can revoke it without notice, at any time without notice.
I can tell you that historically we had an agreement with them for many years, and I don't know what would precipitate such a revocation.
Yeah, I think it's a language that possibly our legal department needs to look at.
We can look into that. I know there is some time constraints with this as far as getting range dates and getting this contract signed. I do believe Commander Fichtel has had good communication with Kendall County as well as other command staff members. But we can look further into it if you want to leave it on unfinished for next week.
Please.
Unfinished. And Mr. Mayor, that concludes Public Health and Safety and Transportation. Thank you so much, committee.
Thank you very much. Before we go on to infrastructure and technology, let's just revisit one more time the finance. Item 20-0793, the insurance item, did we speak about that and was that put on consent?
Yes, sir, it was.
We did, right?
It was.
I'm sorry?
It was, but I would defer to Madam Clerk for confirmation.
Yes, she asked. She wanted to make sure that that was on.
Okay.
I made the motion for consent. I know
Okay,
that.
thank you. All right, well, then that one was on consent. So let's go on to Chairman Garza for the Infrastructure and Technology Committee report, please.
Yes, Mayor. The INT will get together on Monday, November the 23rd. The first item is 20-04-27. It's a resolution to accept the proposals received for 2021 Water and Sewer Division Emergency Repair Program.
Consent?
Consent.
Objection, item will go on consent.
Next item is 20-0678, a resolution adopting and price bids for the purchase of various water and sewer repair main materials for 2021 calendar year.
Consent.
Consent.
No objections, item will go on consent.
Next item 20-0680, a resolution accepting plumbing service bids for the water and sewer maintenance division.
Consent.
Consent.
No objections, item will go on consent.
Next item is 20-0775, a resolution to adopt unit prices provided by respondents for 2021 and 2022.
Consent.
Materials and supplies for the electrical division.
No objections, item will go on consent.
That's all we have, Mayor, for this meeting.
Thank you very much, Chairman Garza. Chairman Franco, can you give the Rules, Administration and Procedures Committee report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Rules Administration Procedure Committee met on November 17th and reviewed the following items. First one being 20-0758, recommendation to approve an aldermanic aide to the alderman's office. And I'm happy to say that we have our new aldermanic aide with us tonight. So I'd like to introduce Kathy McCabe, who's with us. Thank you, Kathy.
Consent.
Kathy, would you like to say hello or any kind of words of wisdom for us as you move along here?
I am just want to let you know I'm very excited about joining the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm happy to have you on board. And we had a consent on that. Thank you. And then the next item is 20-0768, a resolution appointing Wanda Malone to the Advisory Commission on Disabilities.
Consent.
Consent. Thank you very much. And Mr. Mayor, that's all the RAP committee has tonight.
Thank you, kind sir. That concludes the committee reports. Let's go on to new business. Clerk, can you read the item under new business?
20-0805, a resolution authorizing the chief financial officer to enter into an acknowledgement agreement that directs the payment of the second lump sum payment to be made at the completion of the development in accordance with the redevelopment agreement with Fox Valley Developers as amended.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now, I believe we are going to ask that this item be held at this level for a week, but I believe there's going to be some type of presentation on that. Is that correct, Mr. Debo?
I just want Marty could give just a quick update on where we stand here. Marty?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Debo. And
Before we continue, I believe Alderman Masiacos has a motion.
I don't have a motion. I just want to let you know, Mayor, that I'm going to recuse myself from participating on the subject.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The record reflect that Alderman Masiacos recused himself based on conflicts. I'm sorry, Mr. Lyons, can you continue?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Alexander sent out a short email earlier this afternoon that explained what we were doing in the process. The closing, the first major closing on the Copley development project was scheduled to happen fairly quickly over the next few days. And one of the items that was needed was an acknowledgement agreement. We have had similar agreements in the past, usually called cooperation agreements or an assignment agreement. They go by different names. We did one for the Pizzuti deal, for instance. And this just involves the city cooperating with the ultimate recipient of dollars that we may have laid out in a redevelopment agreement. And in this case, for instance, the second lump sum payment states that it would go to Fox Valley Developers. Well, in order to get their financing long-term, their new lender would like them to assign that to them. And to the extent that it doesn't change the redevelopment conditions, we would do that. We've had a lot of negotiations over the last 5 days since the agenda went out, and we weren't able to complete those negotiations. And what it did highlight is we will have a second amendment to the Copley agreement that does not involve additional funds being paid by the city for the agreement, but does recognize some of the complexities related to the financing with the school building and the turnover of that property, and our first payment in the interaction with state historic tax credits and federal historic tax credits. The timing of those tax credits, or rather the receipt of those tax credits, are impacted by when the school takes possession of the property, eventually when the project itself is all done. And so we have more than one amendment that we would like to bring forward to the council. And we felt that it was better not, that we shouldn't just try to do this assignment agreement with no changes. And therefore, we will be coming to the council later in the month with an amendment to the Copley agreement that outlines our future steps over the next 5 months that get us through the first major mortgage, which will be phenomenal that we've gotten to this point, and the project will go ahead. So we will, at this point, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, be able to show how we'll have the school done, how we will have the next phase financed, And we'll do that through amending the agreement. I'll be happy to take any specific questions, but that's the reason that we first had a shell in there in case we could get it done. But now we will just bring an amendment process to the city council over the next 3 weeks.
Question, Mr. Alexander.
So Marty, do you want to just let the council know, I mean, once the second amendment is completed, we are going to be going to finance, correct? COW?
Correct.
We are working on our goal is to do finance, COW, and potentially then a special council meeting on the 15th after COW to try and adhere to a closing schedule.
Just to be clear, we're talking about the 15th of December, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
And if I can just add before I turn it over to Mr. Debo, just to be clear also, I mean, everyone has been working so diligently and so hard on what we all knew was and is a very complicated situation. And so the lenders have cooperated, our staff, the developer. So this is where we jokingly said earlier today, we're on the 1 yard line and we're about to hand it off either to the fullback to pound it up the middle, or hopefully, unlike the Bears, not, nobody's looking to fumble or anything. Don't get me started, Alderman O'Connor. But anyway, so we are very confident, and staff, Marty and David and the developers have worked long and hard with our attorneys. And so this is positive. It's just we're down to it, and we're expecting to get this done, but not unexpected that these types of deals have these little twists and turns and sometimes complications at the end. We had the same thing happen with the Artisan Lofts and the Aurora Arts Center. So this is just complicated in a different way, but it is progressing. And if you haven't been out there, I know Alderman Donnell has been out there. You can see some tremendous progress, not only on the buildings, but on the Seminary Avenue and the park. So it's really going well, and we're really going to hustle here to get this back to you and hopefully approved by the 15th.
Mr. Lyons.
I do want to stress, these changes are not at the request, if you will, of Fox Valley developers. These changes are at the request of their lender, and then also due to the requirements of the state of Illinois in processing the state tax credits and the federal government in processing the federal tax credits. So remember, as Alex pointed out, it's a complicated deal, and we need to comply with the tax credit folks' requirements, and we will. We wrote, I think, very good redevelopment agreement almost, it was over a year ago, but we continue to find out more as we get into the final details of the first major mortgage in a COVID environment. We have a lot of people that are really checking everything in this environment, but we're happy to be able to proceed.
Hold on, Dave Debo, then I'll call on you, Alderman Lofts. Yes, you have your hand up, Mr. Debo.
I have nothing to add. I think Alex really articulated it very well. So I get very optimistic, but then Marty doesn't let me say what I want to say. So,
Alderman Lofts.
Right, so I'm all for this going forward. I hope it works. But the original pro forma, if we're talking about the Copley Hospital, had $900,000 in income from a surgery center, $200,000 for a pharmacy, $200,000 for medical offices, and $200,000 for labs. It's $1.55 million. I just want to make sure there's a new pro forma, and it's, that we're not going to, they had to come back to us for a bridge loan last time for $1.5 million. I want to make sure that not at the last minute, you're going to give us the stuff that I always ask for. Sworn contractor statement, an owner statement, stuff like that, and a new pro forma, because their profit was in those offices, and those, what I understand, are not coming. They didn't get a certificate of need. So please just don't do it at the last minute. That's all I'm asking.
Well, let me, Mr. Mayor, defer to Marty or Debo, but I'm not aware that this issue or what we're talking about right now requires any change in their pro forma at this point. I think what they're doing is continuing to work to close the deal with the school district and continue to solicit tenants long-term. But this is really from the lender's perspective, as Marty pointed out, not from anything to do with them asking us for any more money.
Let me, sometimes when you talk to, accountants and CFOs and folks that run the city, they use these large words and they explain things in a difficult way. I'm going to break it down as simple as this. We're supposed to give Fox Valley developers another $4.5 million based on our agreement. This has nothing to do with performers or anything, just based on our original agreement that the performers are already baked into. $4.5 million at the end of the deal when they're done and they have their building running and it's all completed. They need that 4.5 million now, but of course we're not going to give it to them. So their bank says, tell you what, Fox Valley developers, we'll give you 4.5 million a bridge loan. We know you're going to get it at the end. We'll give it to you now just to get you through so you can develop everything you need. But the bank says, city, but I don't want you giving that 4.5 to Fox Valley developers. Since we're giving the money up front, that's going to be our money. So we want it. So the question is, when are they going to get it? At what point do they get this money? Do they get this money when the building is complete, when people are in, or do they get the money when the people are in it, when it's all full? That's the question. So that's the bank is trying to figure out when they're going to get their 5.4 million from the city at the end. We're not giving any more money than we already said we were going to give. The bank is just going to help Fox Valley developers out so they can finish their project. And we're trying to figure out who, when, and how we're going to give the money to the bank at the end, because they require it since they're going to give the money up front. Simple as that. So the bank's looking for, just a little bit more definition on, when they're going to get their 4.5 million from us. And we're trying to work it out. So that's all we're doing now. And it just sounds more difficult than it actually is.
And Mr. Mayor, and again, part of the last 5 days of intense review and discussion was, to the mayor's point, is that really a change in the terms of the RDA, or was it something ministerial that could be done within the mayor's authority under the existing RDA? And so at the end of the day, we decided after further review that we would require an amendment, a second amendment, so that we are good within the four corners of the agreement and it moves forward properly and appropriately. And so that's what we're doing.
So are there any questions based on what we all know now? No? All right. So just to be clear, Mr. Alexandru, are we going to hold this particular item here, or are we just going to reintroduce a brand new item in a week?
I believe it would be a brand new item. Our goal would be for the Finance Committee and then COW, and then we would put out through the clerk a special notice for a special council meeting to follow COW on December 15th.
So this particular item here, we're going to pull off the agenda, correct?
Correct. It should not appear on next week's city council, but we wanted to, as I indicated earlier from the email, explain to the council where everything is at. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
And the game plan.
All righty. Thanks a lot. There's no further questions. We'll go.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll go on to the mayor's report before we hit the staff report. Now, as we've been talking during this city council, this COW meeting, there are two special days for Aurora City Council. Today, December 1st, is Alderman Hardburn's birthday, and we sang happy birthday to her earlier before we started the meeting. And Thursday, December 3rd, is Alderwoman Garza's birthday. Happy birthday.
Alderman Garza, happy birthday.
Absolutely.
And don't leave out our Chief of Staff retired Sandy's birthday.
Oh, wow. Yes. Just had a birthday today, was it?
No,
yeah. Yesterday was
yesterday.
Yesterday was Sandy Struber's birthday. So that birthday song that we sang earlier that applies to Alderman Garza as well as Chief of Staff's retiring Chief of Staff Sandy Struber from the Alderman's office. And you know what? I want to thank all three of you for your leadership on the council and the work that Ms. Struber has done supporting the council and in the community. When we look at the impact of our Vice President-elect Kamala Harris and the recently announced appointments by the President-elect, the importance of women in leadership is underscored. We have known that and seen it in action in Aurora for quite some time, with Alderwoman Garza and Alderman Hart Burns and Chief of Staff Sandy Struber. The beginning of, in matter of fact, we also have Alderman Patty Smith.
That's right.
I don't want to leave out, whose birthday is March 1st, the beginning of Women's History Month. You know, we have a strong team of women leaders here on our council, and we have a strong team of women leadership in City Hall. In fact, next week I'll be hosting a community conversation with some of our women leaders in City Hall and how they have helped us to navigate this pandemic. Stay tuned for more details about that. Today is also Giving Tuesday. I not only want to encourage Aurorans to support our nonprofit community organizations and causes, but also thank them for all they do for our community. We have hundreds of nonprofit organizations, community groups, agencies, and more that have provided integral services to Aurora. Some for more than a century. This city couldn't operate without our strong female leadership here in the city of Aurora, and all the giving that we all do to make sure all these organizations continue to thrive. You know, in this challenging year, we want to remind all of our nonprofit organizations that money is available through the State of Illinois Business Interruption Grant, the BIG grant program, with grants up to $150,000. These grants are not just for businesses, but nonprofits as well. Some of our Aurora nonprofits have already applied and received funding. If you haven't done so, please find additional information on our homepage at www.aurora-il.org. I'll say that again, www.aurora-il.org. You know, this is, and you know what, this is a perfect opportunity for us to jump into our stable program in a presentation given by Brian Gay, which is where the city stepped up and used a lot of our CDBG money, Community Development Block Grant money, to support our businesses here in our city during these difficult times of COVID-19. Mr. Brian Gay, do you have a presentation for us?
I do, Mayor, and thank you for the opportunity. Again, it's been quite a few months since we've last updated council regarding the stable fund, and I'm happy to announce that despite being quiet, we've still been very active with this program since initially launching it back in May of this year. So if I can here, I'm going to try and hold on. Share my screen here in just a second if I can get it working. Oh, there we go. Okay. Just 1 second. There we go. All right. Can you see? So everybody can see it says program stats. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. So just to kind of remind council and all of our viewers at home, the Stable Fund program stands for strong. Is really a program that was created to cover 30 days of operating expenses for our small businesses, and we were targeting businesses with 50 employees or fewer, in which we would give a forgivable loan of up to $15,000 for businesses with 5 or fewer employees, and for those businesses with 6 to 50 employees, we would grant up to $25,000. As I said, this is to cover 30 days of operating expenses. And as on July 1st, we had 80 original recipients for the program. These were the businesses, these were 80 individual businesses that were chosen through the lottery program that was conducted through the city's Office of Economic Development, Invest Aurora, the Chamber of Commerce, as well as Community Development. And as the mayor had mentioned, these funds came to us available through the city's Community Development Block Grant, which is funding provided to the city by the HUD department. So that was on July 1st. We, as I mentioned, we had 80 original recipients. To date, I'm happy to announce that as of today, we've distributed funds out to 46 of those 80 businesses. And as of this morning, we are just under $700,000. So just half of the $1.4 million that was originally allocated for this program. We've completed 34 awards. And so that means that 34 of the 80 businesses have received the full amount that they were originally awarded. And as that breaks down, 21 of those businesses are in the NRSA, or the downtown area. This is the area that is defined by HUD as a low to moderate income area. So 21 of the businesses are located in the NRSA. 25 of businesses are located outside of the NRSA, or basically the rest of Aurora. And of those 46 businesses to date, they have retained 38 employees. So that means that they've been able to hold on to 38 of their existing employees. And to date, they've also hired 3 new employees. Here is a list as it breaks down with totals per individual business. And these, again, these are just the I want to note that these are just a list of the awardees that have been that have received funds as of this morning here. So as you can see, the list is fairly diverse. You'll also see here is indicated by the star next to those businesses that have either identified themselves as a woman-owned or minority-owned business. We don't get into too much detail, just given the time available, as well as the space on the slides. We don't break it down into the NRSA or outside of the NRSA, but I did think it was important, though, to show again kind of the diverse nature of these businesses. Here's the second page of those businesses, and again, this is if we go back to our stats, this is 46 total businesses to date have received funds up to this point. So that is all I have for today. We do hope that over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we have a number of businesses that are still outstanding. We have businesses that have, as I mentioned, have either received some funds and are still going to be applying for the remainder of their award. We have some businesses that have signed their agreements and are going through their 30 days of expenses and gathering the receipts for that. And then we also have some still businesses that we are waiting on documentation to start those 30 days. So in total, we hope to be moving rather quickly here with a number of these businesses over the next few weeks and getting those final disbursements out before the end of the year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Want to close out on that for me? Just in case, so we can see who might have questions.
Oh, sure thing.
Brian, can you post that on Legistar or send it to all the aldermen? There's no reason that, right, we can't get this?
No, that's no problem at all. Actually, I had originally created this and wanted to update it with those individual amounts. So I can send that off to someone in the mayor's office so we can post it.
Alderman Franco.
I was going to ask the same question. If you can email those to us, who got the money and how much they got.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, and I just want to make notice to, make mention too that just remember that this is only a partial list of the total 80 businesses. We still have a number, like I said, of still completing their documentation or their request for reimbursement. So there will still be more to come after this.
Alderman O'Connor.
Yeah, that ties in with the question I was going to ask. Brian, do you expect to get to that 80 with what you say is out there right now in a number of different stages of process of reviewing and so forth?
It's hard to say at this point. We've had a handful of businesses that since July have either declined their award, or we've found that working through the process are no longer eligible to receive the funding. We do have, as I had mentioned, about 18 or so that have still not yet completed their documentation to receive funding. So we consider that as a decline or ineligible. We hope to move through as many of those as possible. It's just kind of hard to say at this point. Our expectation is to get up to about $900,000 of the total amount at this point, based on what we're seeing.
Alderman
And then
Yamas.
my other,
Sorry, go ahead. Alderman O'Connor.
I just want to mark, go back and what would be the original number of businesses that applied? You reduced it to 80. How many applications did you get originally?
If my memory serves correctly, I believe we had 200 and it was over 250 applications, of which we reviewed at that time well over 220 of them. I believe that was the number.
And given the amount difference between what you might allocate in the original 1.4, is there going to be another round going out at some point?
That's still to be discussed. My suggestion at this point, just given the complexity of the program and the reporting, this may not be the best fund to do that, just given the complexity and the need for businesses. It's taken us, really 6 months to get to this point where, we're just at about half. The reporting itself is a slow process, and again, I think there could be better ways to help those businesses through a different fund that would be quicker.
Alderman Yamas. You went back on mute, Alderman Yamas.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I noticed on the list of the recipients, a lot of those businesses aren't abiding by the governor's order to stay closed and only serve carry out. So I'm wondering if requirement, or if that was a condition of receiving these awards, was to continue to abide by the governor's orders.
It was not. I will admit that when the program was originally designed and voted on by City Council, the situation was not nearly the same as it is today in terms of the whether you're abiding by or not the governor's order. So we're just moving with moving through the program and processing it as our mandate suggested. Is once the reimbursements come in, then we distribute the funds.
And let me just say, these are federal funds, so there are no state mandates for these particular funds. So the governor of a state makes a determination about a state. It doesn't affect these funds. The federal government sets rules and regulations for these particular funds. And we've determined by trying to disperse these funds over the last 6 months that CDBG money, based on the requirements that they have, that you have to consistently follow, and they kind of hold you to a specific way of doing things and never change simply because COVID exists. They still had those same stringent requirements, that it's not conducive to trying to give grants in this fashion. Because if anybody's ever worked with CDBG money, there's a serious reporting requirement that has to be ongoing. And a lot of these businesses weren't set up to report in such a way. Therefore, it's difficult to give them the money and get the reporting that we need to comply with CDBG requirements. Now, we're doing the best we can in trying to force the issue, but we can't force a business to be in a position to provide the information that we need. Unfortunately, if we don't get the information we need, the federal government requires us to pay that money back. So we're trying to work through it the best way we can, but this particular CDBG program probably isn't the best vehicle to get money to those businesses in need. Mr. Alexander, did you have something?
just to augment that, Mayor, that's a great point. But also at the time, we were really scrambling to identify any city funds that we could utilize to help our business community. And we identified 1.4 million. We dug in as quickly as we could into the regulations and the requirements, and we launched the program. And it's a credit to the city that we have been able, under these circumstances, to give out almost 700,000. But we continue to work through Invest Aurora and team effort with economic development, finance, to continue to try and educate and revisit folks. My understanding was, the entire 80 tranche of applicants was looked at. But to Brian's point earlier, there are some folks who just, their business model was not set up to meet these stringent requirements that the mayor talked about, and Brian, for CDBG. So we will continue to pursue and work hard. I know the team is still reviewing applications. There are a number of folks. So this is an evolving number. It's not as quickly, hasn't been dispersed as quickly as we maybe initially anticipated. But everyone is learning in this process because, again, the tired old comment about there is no playbook. Well, there was no playbook for this type of assistance using this type of funding. And it's a credit to the mayor and the city council and the staff that developed this and approved this use. Otherwise, there'd be businesses out there who would be $700,000 to the negative, and Lord knows where they would be work-wise. So we still are pushing, and we appreciate everyone's team effort on this. And hopefully we give out as much as we can, as quickly as we can under the rules.
Questions? Alderman Masiacos.
Thank you, Mayor. So it's safe to, Mr. Gates, safe to assume that you are not accepting any more applicants in regards to the extra $500,000 you anticipate in being a leftover?
Not at this time, no.
So no new applicants being accepted at this point?
Well, no new applicants through the program that we set up that Invest Aurora is running. So we'll make, as an administration, determine how we will disperse the additional monies that are left over that we aren't able to match up.
Okay.
Business.
So the next question is, you will be providing us, you said, with a full list of awardees that you have to date. But will you be providing us with a full list of applicants as was requested when this program was approved by City Council?
Yes, and the only reason why we haven't done that at this point is, again, with a number of these businesses still yet to make a determination whether they're going to accept the award or not. We don't want to necessarily publish the name of the business until we have a definite answer one way or another if they are going to receive those funds. Also, don't also want to report a false number on a business receiving, $25,000 when in actuality they receive less than that. Again, we want to be very respectful of them and their process. This does take, to the mayor and to Mr. Alexander's point, this is a rather intensive application process, reimbursement requests and everything like that. So we don't want to, get out in front of our skis before anything is definitive.
No, I mean, but the applicants, though, you are able to give us a full list of everybody that applied.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so you can provide that to us via email to the entire City Council.
Yes, again, we can do that.
Okay.
Just to be clear, even if it's provided to you, this isn't an apples to apples circumstance where you can just look and say, well, why wasn't this person given money? That's a good business. I know.
Oh, definitely not, Mayor. Definitely not. I personally walked a lot of small businesses in my ward. I want to see if they all applied and make sure they followed through on what they were looking for. That's the key thing. I asked for my ward, but I think another alderman asked for the entire city when we first approved this. But I'd like to know who applied. I think that's a valid request to see who who's asking for assistance, even if they receive it or not.
Any other questions? Alderman O'Connor.
This is a question I was going to ask a little bit later, but I think we're on the topic here, so let's talk about it a little bit further. I continue to have a concern, I think, as Alderman Yamas has already mentioned, that there are a considerable number of businesses that are still open. And my question before is, what do we do about that? And the response was that everything is channeled through the Public Health Department. My question now is, if it's channeled through the Public Health Department, do we get a report back from them so that we know who's involved, so that we have an opportunity on our part to make some approach or some connection with regard to the fact that if these are the requirements, if these are the restrictions that are in place now, it's really getting to a point of being unfair to a number of the businesses that have complied and have closed inside, and what to do about that on our part. And it relates to our discussion now, because obviously if this crisis is going to continue and these restrictions are going to continue, we have to look as what we've been doing and what kind of assistance can we give to these businesses because of what they've been caught in. And I'm saying I wish Congress would get their act together, because I think that's where it starts in regard to, again, some assistance to the American people at all levels in regard to what's happened. And the state itself, and the state is, as we understand, is in a dire financial situation anyway. But then we get to the city level, what kinds of things can we do? And that was the suggestion in regard to the creation of the community COVID-19 response account, in the sense of comparing or combining some of that money with other monies that would be available to try to go back in for any kind of business grants or any kind of nonprofit grants that would be make it better for the business and trying to survive. And so, do we have any thought process as to how we can get to the businesses that we are seeing are still in defiance of the regulations or the restrictions, or do we simply just have to again resort to the Public Health Department to try to do something about that?
Mr. Alexander.
Well, Alderman O'Connor, this has weighed very, very heavily on us, both in the spring when the pandemic first hit, and now with the new wave and the increased restrictions. And so we are, as you know, in 4 different counties. We do not have our own public health department. We rely exclusively on the 4 health departments of our counties. The governor's orders on tier 3 and the different phased restrictions and we've talked about this in the past, our ability to enforce those, and Deb Lang is on the call as well. Our ability to enforce those are very limited. Even with our restaurants that have liquor licenses, we are walking a tightrope, and this is the ultimate catch-22. At our local government level, we just finished talking about the 2021 budget. We rely heavily on food and beverage and other revenues that are generated from open, vibrant, healthy businesses. And so the challenge now is, and you all saw what we did collectively to help restaurants and businesses get through the first wave. And thankfully, after that first wave, the light at the end of the tunnel at that time was good weather and outdoor dining. And so many of our restaurants were able to survive between outdoor dining and curbside delivery and DoorDash and all those different services. But now, we are really in a tough spot. We've had some of our counties enforcing, issuing notices through their process. You've got state's attorneys then who have to decide to pick the ball up and enforce. You have sheriffs. We don't have any control over any of them. And we have great relationships with our counties, where our health departments regularly participate in our emergency operation calls, do notify us, but it's a mixed bag right now. And so we're at the mercy, so to speak, of enforcement by others. We could pull a liquor license, say, but at the end of the day, is that really going to force the closure of a place to comply with a health order that comes from others, not us? And the stark reality is we have to figure out a way as a state, not let alone a city, how to keep our restaurants open and survive the winter that's coming. That's the bottom line. And so this stark reality, it weighs heavily on us. We talk about it every day. We're in constant communication with the health departments, but in the end, Alderman O'Connor, we don't have the complete jurisdiction to do this. And so we've gotten great compliance by some, others are in defiance. Let's call it what it is. And it's a very, very difficult situation. We hope and pray that our business community can survive this. But now with other places closed, people forget, if the malls have to close down, now the restaurants in the food court in the mall, now that has a ripple effect on employees, many of whom who are Aurora residents. So when things magically cut off at the end of December, that's not going to do anyone any good. And especially the folks who rely on the service industries for their livelihood. And we rely on the revenues. So it's, again, a horrible catch-22 we're in. And we continue, we're talking to the governor's office, we're lobbying. I mean, we're doing everything we can. But, short of finding a pot of gold somewhere that we can distribute gladly to folks to get them through, it's a tough spot right now. It really is.
So are you saying that unless the law is changed on the state level or the governor's orders are changed, the only enforcement of those orders have to come through the state police?
State police or at the county level, correct.
The governor is given authority to the sheriffs and the health departments to enforce.
And the state police, I believe.
State police, yes.
Deb, are you on?
Yes, that is correct. And we have had numerous calls when we do receive complaints with the health department, and we have been guiding the public to contact the health department and made aware that the Illinois Liquor Commission is also sending out the Illinois State Police to do checks. But again, it's all at the state level. With the administrative code, the public health code does lay out the enforcement measures that the public health department can do during a pandemic.
Can the state police or the state's attorneys take the action to revoke a liquor license, or that still remains with us?
The state has that ability through their investigators, as well as the local liquor commissioner through our processes, to revoke a liquor license.
But Deb, isn't it a misdemeanor? What are the actual charges that would result? Is it a misdemeanor at worst?
Yes, it's difficult with the health emergency. Our code really doesn't address a pandemic with liquor licensing. So that is, we're kind of in a difficult position. Again, that's why we have relied on the health departments to use their powers through the health department to write letters. And after the health department has issued those orders, our code covers that. If there's a health department order to shut down, then we have more leeway. So there's this first initial step that really needs to come from the county level.
And we've had sheriffs simply say point blank that they are not going to enforce the governor's order in our city. Hold on, Alderman O'Connor, then Alderman Smith.
Just real quickly, I understand completely what you're saying. I follow what's going on, but I'm going to throw into the discussion, there's a balance here. And guess which is on the other side of the balance? That's increased hospitalizations, increased numbers of cases, increased difficulties and terror because of all of that. If we can't figure out either at the state level or lower into the county, how to better enforce the requirements, and it keeps spreading. Terrible word to use there, but it keeps spreading to other establishments. We know that the balance is going to start tipping the other way. And that's my concern. Mr. Alexander, I understand completely that it's an agonizing situation and you're trying to figure out what more can be done in regard to this. But I bring it up again because if we didn't hear it enough anyway, we heard it from Carol Williams. And I just am concerned that if we continue on this path with no compliance, we know what the difficulties are going to be in regard to it. So,
Alderman O'Connor, before we go to Alderman Smith, I can tell you that I sent a letter to correspondence to the governor's office saying almost very same thing you just said. And I personally had conversation with him following that letter, also saying those things.
All right.
And all I can say
I
is
appreciate
work
that,
together
Mr.
state
Mayor.
to make sure that we work together and address this pandemic that we're trying to just get through. Before we go to Mr. Alexandru, Alderman Smith.
No, I just wanted to share that, and I'm sure those of you who live in DuPage County, the DuPage County Sheriff's Department has made a statement stating that they do not have the resources to monitor businesses under the governor's orders. So it's a resource issue. It is, as Alex said, this is just a terrible situation that we're in because people are trying to keep food on the table and pay their bills, and we don't have resources for our police or for anyone else to go and knock on the doors of these places and say you're supposed to shut down, and then they don't want to walk in and shut down a business that the guy might not be able to pay his mortgage next month if he gets shut down. So that there is no right answer here. So it's a resource issue as well as an issue that, yes, people need to be shutting down and doing what the governor says, but we as a city can't be responsible for monitoring that because we simply don't have the resources, and neither does the county level in DuPage County.
And that's that catch-22 that Mr. Alexandru spoke of a few minutes ago. But let's go back to, I'm sorry, Alderman Book.
Yeah, I got two comments. Or first, a question. The other side of this, I understand that the additional order was that all gaming machines were to be turned off at some point. Is that correct?
Yes.
That was early on in the pandemic, and then they allowed that they can be on with certain precautions.
That's currently now. No service of food, no service of drinks, and socially distanced, but the gaming can be open in the establishments that have gaming.
Okay, so they can be on. Okay.
Currently.
Okay, thank you. So as Alderman Smith and Alderman O'Connor said, it's a very difficult situation. We all want our businesses to do well. We all want them to prosper. But I think our first line and really our heart has to be to protect our citizens. And knowing that we had Ms. Williams in our meeting last week, and it's 7:08. I know that there's a large gathering going on right now, not far from Rush Copley Hospital, where people are gathered. They don't have a mask. They're just gathering in an establishment. And it is disheartening that they're doing this and that this continues. My question, Ms. Lang, you said there is some remote chance, and Mr. Alexander, you also elaborated, there's a remote chance that we could start to look at liquor licenses, although it may be just a misdemeanor. But I think all these things are intertwined because we're telling our businesses to go to the stable fund, to go to the county to get CARES Act money, to go to the state to get money. And some of them have been awarded, and yet they're still open and gathering without masks and causing our health crisis to be heightened. So it's very concerning. Ms. Lang, if you could talk a little bit more about whatever opportunity we would have regarding the liquor licenses.
And how it's been established is we would need the health department to do that first step in warning them. And then that's where we can start to step in between the first and second step. However, I know the health department has a lot going on, and just as Alderwoman Smith has stated, it comes down to the ability to have staff to go out there and enforce. We can only go with what we do have. Additionally, you know, as you expressed with the parties that are going on, a lot of the spread is from family gatherings. I know a bunch of businesses that have been in contact with us and are trying to abide by the governor's orders. It's a difficult time. And what we have with the health departments is we've got a system where we need to have them take that first step so we can use our local ordinances, and then we would be able to look at liquor licensing revocation hearings.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, if I could just add one thing, and if I put my risk management hat on, and, you know, we all participate in a number of task force meetings and, you know, constantly every day our days are dominated at times by COVID and our response and dealing with other people and how are we going to get through this next wave. And there are some communities in our region who have been advised, and again, this is my risk hat on, and think about the item that I presented earlier for our package of insurance. There are some communities who belong to risk pools, and they've been advised that under the present setup and the governor's orders and their review legally of what their authority is and isn't, that some communities have said they've been warned they cannot enforce to the level of shutting restaurants and businesses down who don't comply, because if they get into litigation, they will not receive insurance coverage. So we have not broached that yet because we have taken the position from our legal analysis that, just as we've said tonight, other than maybe a misdemeanor, and so if we, and early on, Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, as liquor commissioner and our clerk as deputy, we did send letters out and we did advise liquor holders of consequences to the extent our local ordinances would allow. But at the end of the day, do you pay a $300 misdemeanor fine or whatever it's going to be?
And that presumes the state's attorney prosecutes.
Correct. Well, exactly.
It doesn't mean it goes anywhere.
So we are not at that point yet, but I would fathom, based on my experience and talking to our attorneys, that we may have a similar discussion from our excess liability insurance carriers, that you would proceed, no pun intended, at your own risk and maybe take that lonely walk without any protection.
Alderman Franco. I'm sorry, Alderman Lofty had his hand up, then Alderman Franco.
Go ahead.
Alderman Franco.
Well, you know, I've listened to all this and I've been paying attention for months now about who can do what, what's legal, who's not abiding by the law, who's responsible for enforcing the law. I would just hope going forward that this city, if we're gonna have another program to help up businesses, and we have discretion in that program, that we do not allow funds to go to those who are breaking the restrictions. We can do that. That's on us. Unless it's a federal mandate, unless there's some reason that we can't use discretion, when we do, and we are aware that somebody's breaking the law or not abiding by the restriction and somebody else isn't, I hope that somebody else who's abiding by it gets the money and the other person doesn't. That should be on us, and that's a minimum that we should be doing going forward. That doesn't have anything to do with state police or the county or anybody else. It's our funds. We're going to give out the money. If you don't abide by the rules, you don't get the money. It should be just that simple, because we'll give it to those that are doing the right thing by closing down based on the governor's orders, our own orders, and reward them. It's not punishment for anybody else, but we don't want to reward somebody for not doing what they're supposed to do. And that's the way I would look at it.
Alderman Lofty, then Alderman Yamas.
So I agree. And I think that we need to push, as difficult as the paperwork is for the fund with Invest Aurora. If we have $500,000 left, we have a health crisis. We need to look at how we can get those people that really should close, that are maybe causing the spread. It is certainly hard. We don't want restaurants to close, but in the same vein, if the hospitals are full, we're going to have to do something. So I also find it really hard to believe, as a home rule city, that if we had the will and we wanted to, I'm sure we could enforce whatever we want to enforce. I know you're shook.
That's not true. That's not even close to true. That's not.
I'm sorry, maybe I should go on stop my video, Alderman, and I don't mean to be disrespectful at all, but home rule is not a license
absolutely
to
not.
do whatever you want
But
against
if the state of
law,
Illinois
the governor's order, or our counties. And I
state of-
can't, as a professional in my position, I can't advocate that and ask my staff to take that kind of position.
Absolutely not. Alderman Yamas.
Well, I don't know if that now answered my question, but what I was going to ask was if we as a city council couldn't pass an ordinance mirroring the governor's orders and then enforce our own ordinance.
With like a fine?
We can do a fine, and we can do whatever we have to do. If we have to do that or suspend liquor licenses, I mean, we can get creative with it. But is that something that we could legally do?
Yeah, no.
That we can explore?
I think that still comes back to what Mr. Alexandra was saying with the insurance liability. If this does end up in litigation, and as we have seen, there are firms out there hungry to take on these cases like the Foxfire restaurant, there may be issues with coverage. Again, this is all new. All of the statutes, ordinances, statewide and local, really don't address a pandemic because it's been over 100 years.
I'm talking about enforcing our own ordinance, not enforcing the governor's orders. Would we still have that same? Would we still be exposed to that same liability?
I think in enforcing our own ordinance, it's because of the governor's orders, and I still think we are in that same essentially trick bag.
Let's just talk it through for a second. So let's say,
All right, well, hold on. So, all right. So I understand everybody has an opinion about this, and we can go on all night with all the different opinions about what we should do and how we should do. Trust me, if there was a way to make all this go away, we'd have snapped our fingers a long time ago and tried to make this go away. But we've been working hard as an administration with our lawyers, with our executive staff, trying to figure out how to address the issues. As I said, I personally spoke with the governor myself on a number of occasions on what we can do, especially given the fact that Aurora's in 4 different counties, with 4 different jurisdictions, with 4 different health departments, with 4 different jurisdictions, and even if we were, there's only so much we can do from a local perspective when we're dealing with a state health crisis, that gives the state the jurisdiction. Again, let's talk about the money for a second. Alderman O'Connor, you brought up, that this fund was created to assist those in need. And could we say in this fund, yes, you have to be complying with the law for you to receive this money? Yeah, we could potentially do that. But we know this money doesn't last forever. If you give somebody $25,000, that doesn't save a business. That just prolongs the inevitable if they don't get another 25 infusion. Anybody that's ever owned a business knows that $25,000, it goes away just like that when you have to pay employees, you have to pay overhead, you have to pay rent, you have to pay yourself to put food on the table. This doesn't just because you get a grant doesn't make your problems go away. It just prolongs the inevitable if we don't get this community open back up again. And the only way we're going to do that is if we follow the simple rules: wash your hands, wear masks, social distance, so we can continue to function, as a community. Now we're talking about how do we help our our citizens? How do we help our businesses? Well, we know we usually have two pots of money where we help people. And normally the people we're trying to help are social service agencies. In this case, we're trying to extend that to help private businesses. We had two pots, the Community Development Grant Fund, which we see doesn't necessarily line up the same way. It's set up to help social service organizations, not private businesses. And then we have the Quality of Life grants. Where does that money come from? That comes from the riverboat. Guess what? The riverboat's dang near closed. So we're in a rock and a hard place here. We're trying to function the best way we can to make this work, and we're in constant conversation, not with just the governor, all the other cities, in the area, as well as Chicago, on what we can do, as a region to come together and address these issues. And we're always going to try to figure out the best way to do it. But to sit here and have this discussion, at city council and go back and forth and try to come up with it, it's not going to work this way. If you guys really have, a good suggestions, let's talk about it, offline. Let's talk about it, with Alderman, the mayor, and figure out what we need to do. But it's not going to be fixed here in the next few minutes during this meeting. Deb Lang.
I have a point of clarification. I was incorrect. The gaming terminals inside are supposed to be suspended now. That was the
Tier 3.
Yeah. So I apologize. That was prior to tier 3. So just to
Alderman Jenkins.
Excuse me.
After,
Point of order.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Alderman Bowden.
Thank you. Point of order. So yeah, I thought that was the case. I wasn't 100% certain. So who has the again, is that the state police on that enforcement, or how is that being enforced? If an establishment is running their games and open for inside dining and other things, but that aspect of it, who has the enforcement?
I am not 100% clear on the gaming aspect. I know they have Illinois Gaming Board officers that do monitor. So as that is a smaller sect of law enforcement, I'm not exactly sure who is monitoring that, but typically I believe it was the state.
Alderman Jenkins.
Question I have with regards to, and it was something that Alderman O'Connor mentioned early on, and and I agree, it all goes back to the federal government. And if they could get their act together and do what needs to be done for each American, a lot of this that we're talking about, we wouldn't even be going through. They threw out $1,200 to everyone and said, "Ooh, wow, look what we did." And now they, throwing around nickels like the manhole covers. But from our Congress people and so forth, what are we hearing? What are some of the things that maybe we, working with them, have to continue to push the federal government to get off the dime and do what needs to be done?
Let me tell you what they're saying, because we've had numerous meetings with them,
All
all
right.
of them, and sent letters to every single congressman, even though they're not ours, in the state of Illinois. And they said, "Oh, well, we worked hard. We passed the HEROES Act." Yeah, well, then they got to the Senate and it fell apart. So so I don't know what to tell you, brother.
There's also, Mayor, a Save Our Stages Act
Yeah.
that would bail out another vital revenue source for us,
Theaters.
ACA and the Paramount. That is stalled as well. So there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
Well,
But-
wait a minute. Light at the end of the tunnel in the sense that it may be passed in one chamber of Congress, but then when it goes to the next, it may get stalled. Just like the
Well-
HEROES Act was passed and everybody was beating their chest and so happy about it. Then what happened to it? Nothing.
Well, the light at the end of the tunnel I was referring to was there are certain outcomes that are still to be determined by January.
Oh, yeah.
And so, again, not trying to be political, that's reality, right? That's a fact. So the concern then is that there also, let's not forget, there's still unallocated CARES Act funds throughout the country in different counties that a deadline is looming of the end of December. And if the federal government doesn't extend that deadline, believe it or not, money will have to be returned to the U.S. Treasury.
Mhm.
So can no one get together to say we've got other issues that perhaps let's give some more time, or let's let folks work with their states and their counties? Again, we're just dealing day to day. Our lobbyists We're working Springfield every day. We're working Washington. But at the end of the day.
We're working our counties. We're full for
Exactly.
pressing our counties so
Exactly.
we can get the rest of that CARES Act money.
Okay.
At the end of the day,
got all
well,
of it.
I was just asking, and glad to hear, and not that I had any doubt, but I just needed to find out if, is there more that we can do in terms of pushing our folks on the federal level, because that's where it all begins. But we do have, you're right, Mr. Alejandro, you're right. January is a different time, and
We'll see.
And hopefully what happens in Georgia can go in a certain way so we don't go through the McConnell.
Well, we'll see. We don't want to get too political on this.
Now
city council meeting.
you're getting too far ahead of yourself, Jenkins.
Right. So anyway, looks like we've talked about this long enough. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
There's been a motion made by Alderman Yamas, seconded by Alderman Hartburns with her finger in the air. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Alderman Yamas,
Yes.
Alderman Garza,
Yes.
Alderman Masiacos,
Yes.
Alderman Donnell,
Yes.
Alderman Franco,
Yes.
Alderman Seville,
Yes.
Alderman Hart Burns,
Yes, yes.
Alderman Smith,
Yes, please.
Alderman Bug,
Yes.
Alderman Lopshay,
Yes.
Alderman Jenkins,
Yes.
Alderman O'Connor,
Yes, sorry, my fault for talking further.
12 ayes.
All right. Motion carries. This meeting is hereby adjourned. I'll see you all next week at City Council. You have a very good night, and I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
You guys.
Bye
Good
now.
night.
Good night, everybody.